what you get on. Is it card or read?
Hey everyone, and welcome to another Good Nerd, Bad Nerd. I'm your host Brian, and thank you for joining me, Episode 2, Season 5. And if you're watching this on YouTube, thank you so much for coming along on this experiment with me. Yeah, I'm still doing this. I think the first week, considering it was the first time I'd ever tried it, actually went pretty well. So, pushing forward, gonna keep trying to do this. Hopefully we'll get a few episodes in, and it's something you guys are gonna like and enjoy, and it's just, just another way to enjoy all of the weekly nerd news. So that, again, thanks for joining me, guys. Jumping in this week, before we get into the good and the bad of the news this week, just a little business. First, the weekly comic roundup is back. So if you don't know what that is, we get comics every week, and there's a lot to pick from. Basically what I'm trying to do is give you my take on some of the more big name ones that are out that may, is it worth your money, isn't it, that kind of stuff. So I'm giving you my take on some of the stuff. And this week, just a quick note, DC is launching their big event. This is the Forge, Dark Forge, sorry. So if you're interested in kind of these big crossover events, that's out this week. There's also a new Mighty Mouse cartoon or a comic, and some more stuff from Marvel. Specifically, there's a Defenders comic. So if you are excited for the Netflix stuff and you can't wait for the team up, there's a new comic, because this is kind of how they all do this stuff, especially Marvel, is they launch a new comic whenever a new property is coming out, and Defenders is almost here, so they have a new Defenders comic coming out, so I give you my take on that. And there's another Secret Empire tie-in, but if you've read my theory on that, then you know how I feel about it. But all that to be said, weekly comic roundup is back. I will hopefully be doing those every week along with everything else. Now, last bit of business, my Patreon page. Guys, please go check it out. Give me your support, so that we can make this as kind of as great of a place as we can. And I say we because I believe, I've got help from a lot of people. But beyond that, I consider all of you part of this community, this team. So do me a favor, go by, check it out. I'd love to be able to start including a lot of you people in that. I'm still uploading stuff to the cutting room floor, so there's new stuff out there. This week I added all of my interviews and B-roll footage from the Lethal Weapon red carpet. This was from PaleyFest LA, so check that out. Become a Patreon member and you'll get access to those interviews. Because the way I cut interviews for my videos is I don't use I don't use everything. There's stuff there that doesn't make the video, because I used to just put out everything, 100% of it, but a lot of the times they, whoever I'm talking to is saying stuff that isn't really that interesting, or they say stuff that's not relevant, but there's, a part of it that is just great that you want to get. So I pick and choose, but this way you get to see everything. So do yourself a favor, do me a favor, go check that out. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. So let's jump into the news this week, though, guys. Starting things off, we have some more Adam West Batman news. And first, let's just talk about the Bat Signal. LA, City of Los Angeles, did a tribute to Adam West. They shined the Bat Signal onto City Hall. This was a very cool thing. It was a big event. You had Dick Ward, I believe his name is, who played Robin in the show. He was there. Him and the mayor Garcetti. They're the ones who turned on the light. They did the whole thing, and it was a pretty cool event. So that was great. Good job for LA for doing that. That was cool. I know some people have some video out there, so if you wanted to see it, you could see the mayor's speech and all that stuff. But still, it's just a really cool little tribute. But in addition to that, there's a new Batman comic, and I mention this because I talked about it in my weekly comic roundup, but you have Batman 66 meets the Legion of Superheroes. So that is it's actually a really fun comic, and it feels, it's, the timing of it is is great because it's a nice tribute to him. Because it really feels like the television show. Like this could have been a story arc on the show, and that I think is a nice tribute to him at this time. But even more news beyond that is DC did confirm there is still another Batman 66 animated movie in the works. So stay tuned for that. This is all just Adam West was busy nonstop. So all of these are great tributes to him, and I think they're all definitely worth checking out. There's a couple more pictures up on Facebook if you want to see more pictures from the lighting ceremony. But again, check out that comic because I think it's definitely worth a read. But there you go. Moving on. If you didn't hear, this week there was a little conference in LA called E3. Seriously, is there anyone who doesn't know about E3? Electronic Entertainment Expo. This, I talked a little bit about it last week. This is a big deal, and this year was a little different, and I have mixed feelings on it. I know a lot of people do too, but this was the first year that the general public was allowed in, because it's a trade show. That's what it is. If you don't know what a trade show is, they're generally these kind of essentially conventions, but they're for a specific industry and the people in that industry to see what's new, see what's coming up, things like that. And every industry has trade shows. Trucking industry, plumbing industry, bathroom fixture industry, furniture industry. They all have trade shows. Video games was no different. The difference is E3 as a trade show is so appealing to the general public because it's so entertaining and it looks so cool. So you can completely understand why the general public would want to go to this. And this was the first year they were allowed. Now here's the issue. They let in 15,000 additional people. That's a lot of people. Now I get it right off the bat. That already kind of helps with the overhead and a lot of the costs, because that's just a lot of extra cash. But there's a limited amount of space, and you understand people are there to try out video games, so there has to be enough consoles or computer setups or things like that, and there's not. Sony had a massive booth, and at the most they maybe had 80, maybe 100 if I'm being generous, consoles set up. There was no way for everyone to get a chance to play some of these things. The only Sony game I got to play that was being demoed was the Capcom versus Marvel. Maybe this sounds like me just kind of bitching about this because I didn't get to play all the fun new video games. And yeah, that's a part of it. But at the same time, it's a trade show. It's really hard for me to comment and review and critique the things that they had going on there if I wasn't able to do it. But again, I have that same complaint about Comic-Con. Maybe this is just a complaint about conventions in general. But that being said, what did I see there? What was going on? There was a ton of VR stuff. Some of it was a bit gimmicky. Some of it was very cool. There's this whole indie arcade area where you had a lot of indie developers, and they had some really interesting stuff. They had stuff from kind of mystery games where you had to do a lot of reading and critical thinking and writing stuff down, to a rhythm-based RPG game that was a repurposing of like the Guitar Hero guitar. So there was some really interesting stuff there. The big AAA games all, had a really cool showing. I really wanted to get to play, the Destiny 2 and Battlefield 2, the Star Wars Battlefield 2, or Battlefront, one of them. And then the Modern Warfare World War II looked really good, but all of those I, couldn't get into do. I think for me though, the most exciting thing, and it's the game that you need to go back and watch the gameplay trailer. The gameplay trailer is really long, so I'm not going to put it in here. Not like I put in the Black Panther trailer last week, but Anthem looks amazing. I don't even know what to say about it. You're in kind of this like, quasi Iron Man armor kind of stuff, but you can fly, you can change your loadout with different weapons or different components, things like that. You can completely customize it, but it's a giant open world. It's got a very kind of Destiny meets, I don't know, World of Warcraft, but in that kind of same kind of Destiny guns and rocket launchers and crazy monsters and stuff. It looks amazing. That game, hands down, was one of the top things for me. The other thing, and this is a kind of, it's about time to Marvel, but the new Spider-Man game. Say what you will about his costume. I know a lot of people don't like all the white on it, but this new game looks like their version of Arkham Knights or Arkham Asylum. Oh, it looks so good, guys. Watch the gameplay trailer. You can see Spider-Man doing the things that Spider-Man should be doing. He's being agile. It's not just getting there, and it's not a button smasher thing, but he's like web lining guys. He's being creative with his use of webs. It looks so good. It looks really, really solid. It looks like it's going to be a lot of fun. So that's great. The Xbox One X, I don't have an Xbox One. I am strongly considering getting one for Anthem, because that's going to be an Xbox exclusive, but that's a powerful machine. We're getting to the point, though, with machines, all we're really going to be seeing is larger hard drives and better graphics and better video cards, things like that, because there's not really much from a new feature standpoint that we're going to be seeing, unless it's going to be, ways to do augmented reality or virtual reality that makes sense, because right now virtual reality in the home is a little tough. I know a lot of people can do it with the Oculus Rift, but I'm talking like the kind where you have to like move around and stuff, because that's just not too practical in a home setting. But the Xbox One X for Anthem, yeah, I'd do that. So all in all, E3 is a huge spectacle. It's a crazy event. I have a video up from it showing a lot of the stuff that happened, so go check that out. That I think you'll be pleasantly surprised by all the stuff that was happening there. So next, moving into more good news, and actually it's more comic news, but this is something that has been bugging a lot of Star Wars fans for a while, and it is something related to Force Awakens and now Last Jedi, and that is the fate of one Captain Phasma. What happened to her? How did she escape Starkiller Base? All of that good stuff. Well, Marvel and Disney, they've been doing an amazing job with their Star Wars line of comics, and they have just announced this Captain Phasma comic, and I gotta say, I'm excited for this. This is one of those things that, like, that's a question I would love to have answered. I'm not so concerned about why C-3PO has a red arm. Don't necessarily care about that. This I want to know. So I'm really excited for this. Once it's released, definitely you will be seeing this in my weekly comic roundup, because I cannot wait. So there's not really much more to say about that. I mean, it's probably one of my biggest questions from The Force Awakens was, we know Captain Phasma's in the next film. How did she get out of Starkiller Base? What did that look like? Well, we're going to find out. And this is, I think, a great use of these comics. They released the Force Awakens comic adaptation, and there was nothing new in it. It didn't add anything to the movie experience. So that I felt was kind of a waste. But this makes sense. This is a great use of this medium of taking the comics that, in these events that happen in between the movies, and just kind of being able to expand on it in this way. So very happy for this. I think this is going to be very cool. So definitely check that out once it is available. Moving into DC and CW land, we're going to be talking about Black Lightning. And I told you when the trailer first came out for this, I am very excited about this show. I think it's going to be very cool. It's going to be very cool. But one of the things that did come out this week is that co-showrunner Salim Akil has revealed that he would love Static Shock to make an appearance. Here is specifically what he said. He said, "I love the idea of Static Shock and in success, hopefully, we'll be able to pull other characters in that way. So I'm holding out hopes because I love that character. It's yeah, I think it's a great natural fit. Just like in Flash, how you had Wally finally gain his powers, and they kind of had this mentor relationship. I can easily see something like that with Black Lightning and Static. Kind of he's a mentor, and he's going to be passing on the mantle to Static in a way. And he's a great character. If you never saw the cartoon Static Shock, it was a really top-notch show. So much so that with Justice League Unlimited, Static would show up in various spots. The Justice League actually made a cameo on his show, so that was all very, very cool. Now the co-showrunner also was talking about the possibility of Black Lightning mixing with the other Arrowverse stuff, and here's what he had to say. He said the storytelling is a little bit more political. Obviously, makes sense. It's topical and it's a little grittier. It doesn't mean that down the road there won't be visits. I think all this means is they want this show to stand on its own and be able to tell the stories that they really want to tell before getting kind of bogged down in the scheduling of trying to do all the crossovers, because that's one of the things we've learned about doing the other shows, is that they really have to have the scheduling worked out in order to do the big crossovers. And that's why there were some issues with Supergirl's crossover episodes being pretty weak. It was so last minute that Supergirl was brought over to the CW, they didn't know how best to schedule it. But this is great. I'm really excited for the show. Still have issues with those goggles, but I'm so excited about everything else about the show that I'm going to let that slide. Now, what do you guys think? Are you looking forward to the show? I think this is definitely going to be one to keep an eye on. I watch all those shows, but this one I think is going to be, extra cool. So, moving into the transition news now, we're talking a little X-Men Dark Phoenix. I don't. This is in toss-up, obviously, but here's. I don't know. Here's what it is. There's some casting news. There's some director news. So, Jennifer Lawrence, Nicholas Hoult, James McAvoy, and Michael Fassbender are all set to reprise their roles for this X-Men X-Men Dark Phoenix. And we also know we're going to have Alexandra Shipp, Sophie Turner, Ty Sheridan, and Cody Smith-McPhee are also returning. So that's the cast that we know is returning. In there, some of the toss-up stuff that, for me, I'm done with Jennifer Lawrence in the X-Men universe. I'm sorry, I am. I know a lot of people love her, and she's done some great stuff, but the X-Men universe is not about Mystique. She should not be the main focus, and they have made her the main focus. And that's not how it should be. The other problem is a lot of X-Men Apocalypse was weak. It was very, very weak. So I don't even know what to say about it. I don't want to blame the kind of the young X-Men for that movie, because I feel like it was a weak script and all this stuff, but to top it off, Jessica Chastain is in talks to play Lilandra. If you don't know who she is the head of the Shi'ar Empire. She's their empress. And the Shi'ar are, in this case, going to be the villains. If you don't know who they are, they're this alien race that evolved from birds. And the Dark Phoenix or the Phoenix itself is like a god to them. It's one of their cosmic entities in their pantheon of mythology. And it can possess hosts. And so this is what's happening with Jean Grey. And the Dark Phoenix is essentially when it gets out of control and Jean goes essentially crazy because of it. And the Shi'ar task Lilandra specifically tasks her Imperial Guards to take care of it. The Imperial Guard is like the Space Justice League. And I say Justice League, not X-Men or Avengers, because they've got a guy who's like the leader of it, who's basically Superman. I have no problem with what the story looks like it's set to be. I'm worried about the casting and all of that. But I would like them to give this franchise some breathing room. Just knock it off. Stop. And actually reboot it. Not a time travel reboot. Not a weird, we're recasting, but it's still the same, but it's different. None of that. Just actually reboot. But I don't think they're ever going to do that. And that's disappointing to me. So, what do you guys think, though? Are you excited for X-Men Dark Phoenix? It's one of these things, like, I like the comic storyline. The comic storyline is really good. It's a really good storyline, but this is the second attempt at it on screen, and I'm nervous, very, very nervous about how it's going to go. So, let's jump into bad news. And, hey, we're talking about The Mummy again this week. Who could have seen that coming? And the hits just keep coming, because this week, the story is that Russell Crowe, who is in The Mummy, is the worst Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde ever on screen. That is rough. I say that having seen this may come to a shock and surprise many of you, but David Hasselhoff actually starred in the musical Broadway version of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. It's actually a really good musical, if you're into musicals, but go on YouTube and you can see some of his performance, and it's nuts. It's bonkers. Like, it's funny. It's legitimately funny to watch, and it's entertaining because it's so crazy bad. This, from what I understand, is not fun to watch, and he's just legitimately terrible at it. So that's really, really just not good. So, I have major doubts for this dark universe they're trying to create, because it doesn't seem like they're getting off to a very good start. It'd be one thing if it was just a bad movie, but the characters, or, Tom Cruise and Russell Crowe were great in it, but it's not sounding like that's the case. So, I think there's going to be a lot of discussions about how this universe moves forward, and hopefully they can get past this major hurdle. But it does not look good for them. Moving on. Yep, Transformers. You can't really have bad news without a Michael Bay story, can you? Especially not the week before Transformers: The Last Night opens. That's right, it does open next weekend, and if everything goes to plan as far as scheduling, you are going to be getting a twofer next week. We're going to be doing the Nerd Lounge review of this, and actually Power Rangers, which just came out on DVD. We didn't do that. We're going to get to that. We're going to try and get caught up on some of these things we never did, including Logan and Iron Fist, doing a twofer with those later on. But this coming week, Transformers and Power Rangers. But that's not the bad news. That's not the bad news at all, surprisingly. Well, the bad news is that Transformers is planning another spin-off movie, because there's a bunch, but this one will be set in ancient Rome. I'm going to let that sink in for a bit. Ancient Rome, because this Last Night movie is giving us the truth that Transformers have been around forever. From the trailers, we know they were there in World War II and King Arthur, and so why not ancient Rome? Can you see chariots in the Colosseum transforming? Is there any reason to even discuss why this is a dumb idea? I mean, who sits around and is like, you know what, guys, you know what would be really cool? Circus Maximus, but it's all Transformers. I guess, here's the thing. There was the Beast Wars cartoon, and that was very early CGI, and the CGI by the CG by today's standard is terrible. It's really bad. But the stories were actually really good. We're not going to get stories like that. We're going to get this crazy Michael Bay CG, and it's going to be a very big spectacle, but we're not going to get good stories. So it actually makes me sad, because they, just like the X-Men, just stop, take a break, take a breather. Hasbro, chill out. Let your comic line with IDW grow, let it get better. I mean, it's amazing, but just, let that keep thriving, and then restart the movies. Just restart them. Ignore everything that's come before and do something new, separate from Michael Bay. You don't need to be so tied to him. You got it? Okay? We've had this little heart-to-heart. Michael Bay, I'm sorry, I don't know anything about you personally. Maybe you are a very nice individual, but your Transformers movies suck. Tell me if I'm wrong. Tell me if I'm wrong, and then explain why that last one was not garbage. Okay. I'm sorry. It's the truth. Last bit of bad news, and this is for the upcoming Spider-Man franchise. Now, this isn't about all the Sony spin-off stuff, although in a unusual twist, it might be part of the MCU. That came out today from Sony, although Kevin Feige was more or less denying it. It's one of these things like they're connected because I think they want to be able to use Tom Holland, but those characters will never interact with the Avengers. That's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is that allegedly this movie sets up the Jackal. Who's the Jackal? The Jackal is like the bane of existence for every Spider-Man fan from the comics. The picture on screen, if you're listening on the podcast and not watching it on YouTube, you can't see it, but let me explain it. You've got clones. Jackal is where all the clones come from. Ben Reilly, Kane, Spider-Side. I don't even know who that other guy is because he's in nuts. There's tons of clones. Clones all over the place. And why is that good? It's not good. But allegedly, there is a character in at his school named Miss Warren. Why do we think that is a connection to the Jackal? Well, the Jackal's character in the comics name was Miles Warren. I so hope this is not true. I really do, especially considering the age of everything. And the Jackal is going to be the character spotlight, so I'll explain more of that. But let's just say he had an unhealthy infatuation with with Gwen Stacy. They could mix it up, but he blames Spider-Man for her death, and for some reason he thought he'd get back at him by cloning him, and oh my gosh, this is, I just, I'm so dramatic about this, I know, but the clones are terrible. Even the most recent thing, this Dead No More storyline with all the clones and the new character who was being the Jackal, and he took over that identity, it's all bad. It's all bad. The new Scarlet Spider-Man comic is about a crazy, whacked-out Ben Reilly clone of Spider-Man who's going nuts. It's just terrible. Everything that has... I don't know that there's one good thing that has come out of a Jackal storyline. I'm going to say that. I'm going to say that right now. And I don't think that's a controversial statement. The Clone Saga, the Maximum Clonage, I mean... it's really, really bad. Yeah. I mean, because you even had this whole period where the Jackal had convinced everyone that Peter Parker was the clone and Ben Reilly was actually the real one. And just... I got no room for this. I got no room for this. It's terrible. You heard me. It's terrible. But talking about the Jackal, let's just move into it. That was the bad news. But let's talk about Jackal, Miles Warren. Um, yeah. Let me give you just the brief rundown on this character. In the hopes that you will never need to know this information um, it just let's just hope it doesn't happen. Let's just hope it does not happen. Okay, so his real name, Miles Warren, except if you count this past Dead No More storyline where Ben Reilly, who was one of the clones, took it over. But his first appearance was in Amazing Spider-Man number 31 in 1965. So he's an old character. But he was a professor of biology at Empire State University. And there he met Peter Parker and Gwen Stacy and basically became infatuated with Gwen Stacy. He was obsessed with her, and he pictured life together with her in the most creepy way you can imagine. Well, when Gwen Stacy died at the hands of Green Goblin, Warren blamed Spider-Man. Like, psychotically blamed him. And at the same time, his lab assistant, who his partner, had just perfected. I say perfected, but they had just finished cloning a frog, and they had successfully cloned a frog. So that was a big deal for them. And what he did is he took cells from Peter Parker and Gwen Stacy, and he had his lab assistant start cloning them, and he told them that they were from mice. Well, mice cells and human cells and DNA are probably it probably didn't take too much for him to figure out that they were not mice cells and DNA. He figures it out, and he confronts Miles, and he says, "We can't do this. This is unethical." And Miles kills him. It was an accident. He was trying to keep him to stop him from shouting, an argument, whatever. He kills him, and in order to cover it up, he creates this identity of the Jackal. And he makes a costume. He actually starts working out and getting in really good shape so that he's can be this evil villain for some reason. And eventually goes on to clone Peter Parker. And the first one that he clones is this character by the name of Kane. And Kane was a kind of a failed, I don't know if you want to call it failed, but he was not a perfect clone. And he was slowly falling apart. He was degenerating, but also regenerating. I mean, he's a mess. And so that's the short introduction to who he is. Notable abilities: he's a genius geneticist, biochemist, and cloner, obviously, since all of his storylines have to do with cloning. He's a talented martial artist and gymnast, which, again, he was training himself. But then he does have superhuman strength, speed, and agility, and I think this is from his genetic manipulations and things like that. That was the past one. The current version, I don't know if he's even alive anymore. Pretty sure he's died. I know during this whole Dead No More, Ben Reilly was killing him and recloning him, and I don't know if the original is still there or not. Anyways, yeah, it's. I am not a fan of this character. I'm not a fan of the storylines that revolve around this character, and I really, really, really hope this isn't true. It's just a nice wink if it's in the background, and I'm fine with that. But any more than that should not happen. Partly because they're in high school. The whole infatuation thing just can't happen. It just can't. But maybe I'm alone in that. Let me know what you guys think about that. Let me know if you think the Jackal is a great villain. I mean, it's different, except that he kind of looks like the Green Goblin in certain variations. So he's not actually going to be that. They just really want a green guy with pointy ears to be the villain, I guess. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think. The Jackal's terrible. He really is terrible. There's no getting around it. But let me know what you guys think. Don't forget, if you're listening to this podcast on iTunes, thank you so much. Leave me a comment. Leave me a rating. Tell me what you like. Leave me comments down below on Facebook or on the blog at goodnerdbadnerd.com. And you can follow me everywhere on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, just search Good Nerd Bad Nerd. Instagram. There's going to be a lot coming up this summer. This week we've got, again, the Transformers is coming out in theaters, so I'll be at a press screening for that. Hopefully I'll have some stuff up on Instagram. But then the following week we've got the Saturn Awards, and then I have some people who are going to be at D23 covering that, so stay tuned for all of that. And then the big thing at the end of July, San Diego Comic-Con is coming up. So stay tuned, guys. There's a lot happening, and I would love for you guys to be involved. Don't forget, please go check out my Patreon, and you know what? Join the team. I would love for you guys to join the team and be a part of the Good Nerd Bad Nerd family officially. So do that for me, and tell me what you guys want. I am here to serve you and to talk into a microphone. So, until next time, guys, I'm Brian from Good Nerd Bad Nerd. Talk nerdy to me.
Talk nerdy to me. Talk nerdy to me.